Hey guys, my Teddy Swole Svelte t-shirt. I love history. And if you're following my channel, you know that not only do I love history, I love old memory training books. I have an old memory training book club. You can join it for free. It's down in the description of this video. And in there, you can join the book club for free. You will get my synopsis, my review of these old memory books. Plus, you get to download the old memory book for free. It's so cool. At least I think it's cool. Today's old memory training book was written by Dr. Arthur Gates in 1922. The title of the book was called Recitation as a Factor in Memorizing. And before you let that title scare you, basically all it means is this. Dr. Gates believed that if you read information and then you recite it, don't look at the information but say it out loud, you're going to remember more of what you read. He was inspired by Sir Francis Bacon. Sir Francis Bacon was born in 1561 in London. He was a philosopher and known as the father of the scientific method. Sir Francis Bacon wrote this: "If you read anything over 20 times, you will not learn it by heart so easily as if you were to read it only 10, trying to repeat it whiles and when memory failed looking at the book." So Francis Bacon was saying, if you wanted to remember something and you read it just 20 times over and over again, you will remember it less than if you read it 10 times. Read it half as much, but in between each reading, look away and see how much you can recall of what you read. In this book, you'll hear me refer to that as an active review. But this is something that Sir Francis Bacon was writing about 450 years ago. Dr. Arthur Gates did a series of studies on it 100 years ago. In these studies, he let the students read and then they were to recite what they had read. The first group, he told them to only read and then recite nothing, and then he tested them on it. The next group, he had them read 80% of the time and then recite 20%, and then he tested them on it. The next group, they read 60% of the time and recited 40% of the time, and then tested on it. The next group, they read 40% of the time and recited 60% of the time, and then were tested on it. The next group, 20% of the time they read, and then 80% of the time they were to recite, and they were tested on it. He did a series of experiments like this, measuring the time reading versus the time reciting. Well, Dr. Gates found the magic recipe for this. The magic formula was 40% of the time should be spent reading, 40% of the time should be in reciting. I'm no math genius, but 40 plus 40 is 80. What's the other 20% of the time? I looked for it in Dr. Gates' book and I just couldn't find it. No doubt it was there, but I just missed it. My guess is that 20% of the time is when you go back and you review, and the items that were not able to be remembered, you make them stronger in your memory. It's the read, recite, review principle. Now, he did some studies on this that are pretty dramatic. He had one group that they read and there was no review. And then he had another group doing this magical formula of 40% reading, 40% reciting, and then 20% reviewing. That group, immediately after when they were tested, scored twice as high as the group who just read. The results were even more dramatic 3 to 4 hours later. 3 to 4 hours later, the group that recited what they had read scored 4 times higher than the group who had just read the information. This is astounding. When you are studying, if you're just reading the information, you are going to remember less than if you recited and read the information. Sir Francis Bacon said it 450 years ago. Dr. Arthur Gates did studies on it 100 years ago. He dove even deeper into this, and he tested the group on information that made no sense, just a bunch of random syllables, versus information that did make sense, a biography, something they were familiar with, a story about a person. He found that when the information didn't make any sense and it was random, the resuscitation, the reciting of the information was even more important. Now, what does this tell you as a student? This tells you as a student, if the information is not familiar to you, if you are not really knowledgeable at the subject matter, reciting the information after you learned it is going to be even more valuable than if it's something that's easy to understand, like a biography or a story about a person. Now let's think about it and let's ask why this works. It's because that reciting the information is equal to practice. For example, I do jujitsu, and when I do jujitsu, the coach will be in the middle of the room. He will teach a move, That would be the reading part of learning. And then he'll say break. And when he says break, we all break up into partners and we try the move. That would be equal to the reciting, the practicing it part of it. Another benefit of reciting the information, it distinguishes between what is essential and what is non-essential. For example, whenever you're repeating what you learned, in that process, you're like, oh, you know what? This is really important. I'm going to hang on to this. You know what? This is not really that essential. The next thing that it does, you're going to discover, what do I really know? What's hazy in my memory? What do I not know? What do I need to focus more on? And really, you're going to get this by verbalizing the information. Dr. Gates, in his book, wrote of a story of a psychology professor, and a student came to this psychology professor and said, I just have such a bad memory. And what the psychology professor discovered is that the student didn't have a bad memory, but what they were doing is they were just reading the information over and over and over again and then going and taking the test. In the words of Dr. Gates, they were concerned with impression, reading it over and over again. They were not concerned with expression, reciting what they had learned. Now here's the question, when do you start reciting? Well, it all depends, really. You have to take a lot of things into consideration. Let's say you have a massive amount of text to memorize. I mean, books and books and books. In that case, you may want to read longer before you start reciting the information. On the other hand, maybe the information is really, really technical. And if that's the case, then you might want to recite more frequently to make sure you're understanding what you're learning. It also could depend on your age, your knowledge of the subject matter, and simply put your goal of learning. Are you reading just for fun, or are you reading because you want to know this in detail? So the answer is, it's really going to all depend upon you. You look for your magic formula of how much should you read and then how much should you recite. I like to go for what I call walk and talks, where I will take the information that I'm learning and I will have it in my book, and then I'll just walk and I'll just talk about it and I will recite what I'm learning. I'll have the book there in my hand if I get stuck and I want to look up anything and I don't want to recall it. But on these walk and talks, I am reviewing. I am reciting the information that I just learned. Plus, I'm getting a little bit of exercise, which that's good. In a class, in school, whether you're in college or high school or junior high or whatever, rarely will the professor account for recitation during the class. Most professors don't teach something and then ask you to repeat what they learned. The good ones do. The good ones can figure out how to get you engaged and to get you answering questions and get you shouting out things. Don't put the pressure on your professor that they need to give you opportunities to recite during that hour, because it's probably not going to happen. So what you need to do is this. Tell yourself before class, I am going to test myself after class by having to recite, by writing out what I learned. This will increase your desire to pay attention. This will increase your desire to remember more. This is what Ernst Muhlmann, a German philosopher born in 1862, referred to as the will of memory. You're going to increase your will to memorize or to remember by knowing that there's going to be a test afterwards. And the test is going to be one you give yourself. So take general notes in the class, take overall bullet points. Don't try to write down every single word, but focus on paying attention and increasing your will to remember it. Then after class, recite what your teacher taught in the class by writing it out. This will also serve as notes that you can combine with the notes that you took in class for your review later. So there's no doubt that reciting information is going to improve your memory and your recall. This was talked about by Sir Francis Bacon 450 years ago and Dr. Arthur Gates over 100 years ago. If you'd like to get Dr. Arthur Gates' book on this subject, I have it down below in the description. Join the Old Memory Book Club. It's free, but not only are you going to get this book for free, you'll get other old memory books. You'll get the New Art of Memory, published in the 1800s. You'll get Isaac Watts' book, published in the 1700s. There are just so many memory books. You got to join the Old Memory Book Club. That's all I'm going to say on that. Here's a test for you. Comment below what you learned in this video. That will be your act of reciting what you learned, and you will remember more about this video. That's an idea. By the way, I'm a memory expert. I have a memory course called Black Belt Memory. If you'd like to get my Black Belt Memory course, I'll put a link down below in the description, as well as a free gift for you just for checking it out. I'll see you on the next video, and this was awesome. Recite what you want to remember. You'll remember it more.